Hey guys, so let's talk about last night's episode of The Following, which was just seriously mind-blowing. Like, the last 5 minutes was definitely like, what is going on? I was super excited. I mean, it was kind of crazy, so let's talk about it. First, I want to talk about Claire. Let's talk about my favorite part of this episode first. Claire, you guys, has stepped it up a notch, and I am so excited about that. From now on, I am calling her Claire 2.0 because she has grown a pair, and she is like a woman on a mission. I loved that immediately she did the first thing that most of us would do. She tries to get out of the house with her kid, and she tries to escape. But of course, there's cameras everywhere, and so, you know, they're down at the gate, her and Joey trying to get out, and the gate, of course, is like chained shut. And they turn around, and all of a sudden, they are surrounded by followers. So after this little incident, of course, Claire gets like one of those kind of like ankle security bracelets put on her. And yeah, we just get that it's going to be a little harder for her to try to escape again. Now, my favorite Claire moment in this episode was between her and Emma. Throughout the episode, we saw Emma kind of like dancing around Claire. You know, like she hasn't actually seen her face to face since she's gotten to the house. And Emma kind of wants to apologize, but really she just wants things to be the way they were, and she wants Claire to understand why she did what she did, right? But Claire 2.0 is not having any of it, right? So there's this scene where Emma is like, got her super crazy on, right? And she's just like, oh, Claire, it's so good to see you, and I loved my time with your family, and hi, Joey, how are you? I mean, it was just kind of like, okay, whatever. And Claire's just like, don't talk to my son. And at one point, she tells Joey, you stay here. And she goes out into the hallway, like she follows after Emma. And basically, the next thing you know, there's like slapping, and then Claire like shoves her up against the wall, and she's got her hand wrapped around Emma's throat, and she tells her like, if you talk to my son again, like, I will kill you. And you knew that she meant it. I mean, it was just deliciously awesome, and I loved it. I loved seeing Claire kind of stand up for herself in the House of Crazy, and I loved seeing Emma kind of, you know, get knocked down a few pegs. So take that, Emma. Now, meanwhile, with the FBI, Mike is back, right? And I'm really excited about that, but Mike is also not well. So he's really kind of like aggressive, and like you just get that he probably should still be in bed recovering instead of returning. Like psychologically he's not ready. But he's back, right? And the FBI is at this training facility that they discovered last week. And they're basically just like going through all this information. You know, there's video and there's files, and so they're starting to actually ID some of these cult members. And eventually they make a connection between the cult and this militia group, the militia group that Vince was a part of. Now, back at the House of Crazy, Joe also realizes, like, look, now that the FBI has our training facility, they're gonna make that connection between us and this militia. And the thing about Daniel Monroe that's really kind of important is that he's the one who helped Roderick find this house that they're living in. So, of course, they don't want the FBI to talk to this guy. So, basically, Joe decides this guy needs to die, and who should volunteer to do that, to kill him, but our little beloved Jacob. And I said it at the beginning, you guys, that once Jacob started killing, that he was going to kind of be the worst of them. Like, he was going to get the taste for it. And it really seems like that is what has happened. Like, he has gotten a taste for killing, and he's just ready to do it at all times. We're also still kind of seeing that power struggle between Joe and Roderick, you know, so that's kind of interesting to me, especially based on what happens at the end, which we'll talk about soon. And also Claire really kind of feeds into that. Like, her and Roderick have this discussion at one point, and she tells him, like, you know, you can't trust Joe, right? And Roderick doesn't say anything, but you totally get that he hears that. So Joe, Vince, and Jacob head off to find this militia guy to kill him. The FBI heads off to find them as well, and they find the house first. Now, once the FBI finds the house, you know, Mike does his whole crazy aggressive thing and, like, beats the crap out of this militia guy. It was a bit much. Eventually, they find the leader downstairs in the basement. They talk to him a little, right? And from him, like, he drops the hint that there is a house. And Ryan totally picks up on that and, you know, tries to get more information out of him, but this guy is just like, I want to talk to my lawyer. Like, I'm not saying anything else until I see a lawyer. Now, before you know it, Jacob and Joe and Vince show up, right? There's kind of this, like, little struggle amongst the group. Agent Parker gets trapped and captured upstairs by Jacob, who ties her up and has a knife and is gonna cut her, basically. And then downstairs in the basement, Joe manages to capture Mike. He ties him to a chair, and he locks himself in this room with him, right? Now, Ryan is on the other side, and there's this glass that's bulletproof, and, you know, it kind of gives the two of them this chance to interact. And I think the scene between the two of them is really my favorite Ryan and Joe scene to date. I mean, like, it was really good, very telling, and just really kind of deep between the two of them. All throughout this episode, too, we've been getting that Joe is kind of unraveling. You know, he's trying to write this book, but at the beginning of the episode, we get that he's having a hard time figuring out Ryan. He's having a hard time figuring out how to write him because he doesn't understand what his motivation is. So now that he's kind of got Ryan where he wants him, you know, he's got Mike as leverage, he starts to like really ask Ryan questions, and he questions him about the death of his father. And at first, you know, Ryan is like, I'm not going to talk about it, but of course, again, Joe has the leverage of Mike, so eventually Ryan spills his guts. So we flash back to 1983, we see Ryan and his dad like on their way home one night. They stop at a convenience store. Dad goes into the store, and it turns out that the store is being robbed by some like guys that are like high. And basically his dad gets killed. We see Ryan too like try to run into the store, and as the guys come out with the guns, we see the guy who killed his dad like stop and point the gun at Ryan, but then he runs away. But Ryan goes in and basically watches his dad die. So he tells Joe this story. So Joe really kind of uses that story to tell Ryan like, death is the thing that drives you. That's what the answer is that I've been looking for. And by the way, death drives me too. And throughout the scene, I think that's the thing that Joe wants him to get, is that you and I are so similar. You and I are very much alike. And based on what happens at the end of the episode, I mean, that's the really, really scary part. So as the story goes on, you know, Joe asks him, what happened to the guy that killed your dad? And Ryan is like, you know, he OD'd a couple of days later. And so that was that. But later, what we find out is that Ryan actually killed the guy who killed his dad. So we see a flashback of a young Ryan holding a gun on this guy and basically making him, like, take drugs until he dies. So we get that Ryan has killed someone, you know, so that makes the whole conversation with Joe like 10 times more. You know, that look, we're so similar, and really they are. And I think that's a part of what really kind of eats away at Ryan as well. So it was really, really interesting that scene was. Now Joe and Jacob manage to escape. Vince gets killed by Ryan. Now once they get back to the big house of crazy, you know, Joe tries to kind of like go see Claire, but Claire 2.0 is not having it anymore. And so she really kind of shuts him down. And he's really frustrated. And by the end of the episode, we see him and Emma in the kitchen stripping their clothes off again. So I think that's not a good thing for Claire. You know, like, I know she's frustrated with him and she wants to get out of the house, but I feel like, you know, really her only leverage at this point, the only reason she's alive is because Joe is still working with this whole fantasy of having my family together again. So I think she needs to be really, really careful. The other kind of shocker at the end of the episode is that, you know, once the FBI calls for backup and there's all these police and fire department and ambulances and stuff, who should show up but one of the local sheriffs, who is Roderick. I mean, you guys, like, my jaw hit the floor when I saw him. I was not expecting it, so it was another shocker at the end of the episode. Okay, guys, thanks so much for watching. If you want to check out my review of last week's episode of The Following, go ahead and click the video link here. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you guys again soon. Bye-bye.